and go, okay, I'm going to read it in backwards. So if Bernie said that, I'd be done with him in a second, in 1 second flat. Any politician I support says, maybe we should, there was something, it was an injustice against me. Let's terminate the Constitution. No, get the hell out of here. That's it. I'm done with you.
And look at Cenk. Give me in the comments here if you agree on that section with Cenk. But Cenk is going to go wackadoo here against the Electoral College. Don't miss this.
He does. All right, whatever.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Right, look, I don't look. We can argue about the English language. Maybe in German he doesn't mean that, but in English he said terminate the Constitution. He didn't say the Democrats think to terminate the Constitution. He said the exact opposite. And Tim, it's not 1% unclear, and that's part of what I'm worried about. So that's why
84 by that point, something like that.
Yeah. So I'm less worried now because the popular vote was on his side. So now the right.
You're not seriously scared of him staying in office for another term, because I've heard that before. Like, I don't know if you seriously
but here's
believe
the thing, brother. When somebody says I'm going to terminate the Constitution, when someone says, "Oh, I don't have real electors, I have fake electors,"
somebody says I'm not going to pardon my son and then pardons my son, we're dealing with politics, and all of these guys are full of liars.
Nonsense.
So lies from Republican matter, but not lies from Democrats.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because both Biden and Trump have done horrific pardons. Egregious, unacceptable pardons.
True.
But Trump doing a pardon of Charles Kushner, which is very similar to Hunter Biden's pardon, is terrible. But I wouldn't say, oh, you should never vote for that guy. You can't vote for that guy. That means terminate the Constitution. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means it's a crappy pardon, okay?
True.
So there's a giant difference between, hey, I disagree with you, or you did something really wrong, and I'd like to end the country by ending our Constitution and our democracy. So to Tim's point, whether you guys agree with me or not, whether the right wing agrees with me or not, that was my concern, okay? So am I less concerned about it now? Yes, not because they've changed it all, but because Trump won the popular vote. So there was a lot of talk from the right wing of, well, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Screw democracy. We don't want democracy. Pete Hegseth, writing in his book about we should, gerrymander so badly that the Democrats never win again.
But there's a bunch of Democrat books talking about packing the Supreme Court, and now we're going to add states.
And I hate it.
All right, and so I'm not a fan of democracy. I don't want democracy.
See, there you go. So that's exactly what I'm worried about. That's why I'm not right wing.
What about our democratic republic?
Because
we're not a direct democracy. Like, do you mean our type of democracy as a republic, or just in general?
I hate this discussion because we are a democracy, but there's different types. We're a representative republic. So it's a constitutional representative with basically breaking it down to the Electoral College. So so for Tim to say I hate democracy, that's not accurate. You mean a direct majority rule, and he's going to explain it here, but he just tries to play with these words.
Liberal democracy is a general colloquial term we use for countries like the United States and our system of governance, and that's what I'm for. Democracy in this idea that majority rules doesn't make sense. As the famous saying goes, a democracy is two wolves and a lamb deciding on what's for lunch. A republic is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. There has to be some chance for minority representation, and that's what we have in a constitutional republic with democratically elected representatives. So I like this. And so when I say democracy, if someone doesn't understand the blanket term of what democracy is, they assume you're saying, I want fascism or something, which is not the case. I want a system of guaranteed civil rights, a degree of free market, but I believe there should be government regulation to a certain degree.
I am not for civil rights. I don't understand that. We have the Bill of Rights, and it applies to all people. Once you start, I am against the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Once you start saying, well, we have the Bill of Rights, but we need extra rights for this group. Oh, well, why don't I get extra rights? Oh, yeah, your group gets extra. Well, then why doesn't that group get extra rights? And now you get into the position where I'm in a job interview and I can't say no because of these certain reasons of different rights. I should be able to choose. If I own a company, I should be able, and people do this anyway, they just don't tell you. They just don't make it public because of the Civil Rights Act. Maybe you're not the right fit. Maybe but the NBA gets away with it though. The NBA can say, well, you're too fat or you're too slow for this job. You see that? So some businesses can discriminate against you're this or that, whatever traits you have. But other businesses can't. Can you go play in the NBA if you're in a wheelchair? And I know they do these cutouts where they say, well, you have to generally be able to do the responsibilities of the job. Well, if you have to do that, Why are you involved in the first place? And if you argue that without civil rights, you'll go back to Jim Crow, I would say I have no problem with Jim Crow as long as it's not the government. The Bill of Rights it should be the government protecting the rights of the people. Meaning the government can't say, because of your skin color, you get taxed more than somebody else. That's not civil rights. That's just the bill. That's just rights. When they start getting into civil rights, they say, you have to let anybody of any skin color into your business. No, I don't. I can choose who to come in and for whatever reason I want to. Maybe I don't think you look right. You look scary to me. I don't like you. You shouldn't be able to come into my business. Let's continue.
And I like how we have a system that balances the interests of the minority and the majority in different ways. It's not perfect. It's near impossible to do, but I think we have a great system here.
I'm sorry, just to get this straight, you're against DC statehood, against Puerto Rican statehood, against adding states?
No,
Because that would be a power play from the Democrats.
No, it depends. So, like, DC and Puerto Rico happen to be more progressive, Democratic leaning now. But if they were Republican leaning, we could still have a conversation.
Yeah, but you could see how Republicans think it's like an obvious partisan play where they're just trying to get 4 more senators.
Yeah, but so the Electoral College is obviously partisan horse crap at this point. It should be, fixed and amended.
So that's why it's hard to take your arguments about democracy seriously when you're.
Why?
Because you don't care about democracy. You're willing to bring in
that's
new
not
states
true
and completely.
At all.
You're
making outrageous.
No, you're willing to
ridiculous
completely.
points.
You're willing to completely upset our electoral system and then stuff it with essentially 4 Democratic senators.
No nonsense. Why are we even look? The original system of the Constitution is deeply flawed. So a tiny state like Wyoming gets 2 senators. A gigantic state like California gets 2 senators. But hold on.
Yeah. It's designed like that on purpose. This is frustrating to listen to. Cenk is on point sometimes, and then he is completely wackadoo. If you don't believe in the Electoral College, you don't believe in America. You don't believe in the idea of America at all. It's not possible.
Let me just finish the point.
Finish the point,
But
then
in order to fix that, or fix the Electoral College or anything else, you have to go through the process. I believe in the Constitution. So you want to call it a republic, you want to call it a democracy. I'm good with all of that as long as we don't end the Constitution, we don't end our democracy, we don't end our civil rights protected by the Bill of Rights, protected by the Constitution, etc. Then we can have arguments about, hey, do we admit Alaska and Hawaii? Well, Alaska's Republican, Hawaii's Democrat. Let's have that conversation. Do you admit DC or Puerto Rico, etc.? That's not anti-democratic. That's just a normal political conversation.
I agree.
So just the way that you frame the argument about state senators and stuff like that implies that the number of people in the state matters.
Yes,
it doesn't matter. It
The
absolutely
democracy
doesn't
matters.
because
Well, that's not how in the Constitution.
No, but it doesn't matter because it's not about democracy with that. The senators are supposed to represent the interest of the states, not of the people. The House represent the people. This is something that you absolutely know. And so
I know.
and so the fact that you
I don't believe it.
No, they both represent the people. This is Phil here. They both represent the people. He's telling Cenk what he really is trying to tell Cenk is, and they're going to talk about it, is you can't, if you didn't have this is the debate that Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, they all had this debate. You can't let the urban areas or the cities rule over everything. How do we put this together? Our country is based on major cities where most of the money is coming through, and then rural areas where all the food comes from. How do we set up a system of government where the people in the city who don't understand, remember Cal Kalinske? He flew over farmland and didn't even know what it was. How do we stop the Cal Kalinskes of the world from dominating the rural areas and destroying our food chain, our supply chain and food, because they don't know what they're doing and they're ignorant and arrogant? And vice versa, the city thinks the rural areas, if they got too much power, they wouldn't know how the urban areas work. It's beautiful. You have the Senate, there's 100 of them, and they represent the people of the state, but at a larger level. They are a catch. You see the systems of kind of checks and balances. The House, more direct, closer to the people, represented by district. So your districts that do have bigger states have more representatives, but they can only do so much. Certain things, bills pass, the bill needs the House and the Senate to pass the bill. The Senate is more macro. They look down at the House, but there's only 100 of them, and they give you a more macro level, and that is your legislative branch. Just absolutely brilliant. And then the Electoral College allows to not get a president that doesn't understand this. Just what a beautiful system.
I think it's a terrible system.
That's well.
I think it's a
then you're.
I think the Senate is a terrible system.
Then that's. I think that's completely absurd.
It doesn't matter. I'm not going to win on that. Okay.
No, but
look, I'll tell you this.
No, but the fact of the matter is, your viewers don't know. They don't understand that the states are supposed to be represented by the senators. And when you
of course they understand that.
no, they don't. Not
It's
when you,
elementary civics. We
that
all
does
know it.
not-
We just
no,
don't agree.
no,
and I
no,
guarantee you,
no,
if
they
it was
don't.
flipped, you'd go
They
nuts.
don't. They
If we had
don't
tiny
know
little
that.
Wyoming that had the same
Stop
amount
trying to
of
change
votes as
the
Texas,
subject.
No.
Stop
but
trying to
there was,
no, because
Hold on,
Florida
hold on,
has.
all right. There's Rhode Island.
Yeah, and
yeah, no,
Florida
I'm
has
with
this-
you. But if there was more blue states that were tiny
Ohio's
and giant red states,
Ohio's the
the reverse
fifth
of what we have
most
now,
popular state, and
I
it's a red
guarantee you,
state.
every one of you would be
You're-
making,
now
this
you're
is
just-
outrageous.
you're just trying to
Why
change
did this
the
is
subject
one
and
man,
deflect.
one
You're
vote? How
just
come it's
trying-
not one man, one vote?
Jake, you're
All right.
just trying to change the subject and deflect. The point that I'm making is when you portray it as if it's not democratic because it's not popular vote. That's what the House is for. You're misrepresenting what's going on, and your viewers.
I'm not
I do not
Okay,
care
okay, all right.
that you say your
Right,
viewers
right.
know.
We-
They
we-
do not know.
All right, so you
That's
made the point.
civics
I would
in
say
eighth
this.
grade.
Here's the problem: is the 17th Amendment, because Cenk is not necessary. Or if Cenk's view is that the senators are representing the people, that's not wrong since the 17th. It used to be that your state legislatures would
Yeah.
appoint people to represent the state's interests, and then we changed it in the early 1900s. I
Yep.
think that's a mistake. I think
agree.
states should have representation. I'll tell you exactly why. Cenk,
No, what Tim is saying is the House of Representatives, to my knowledge, I'm gonna look this up real quick and let this go. To my knowledge, the House of Representatives used to pick the senators instead of the senators being voted in. And that there's a good discussion there to say, but that's still the same thing though. But big picture. But there is a discussion to be had there. But if you're gonna say that the senators should represent, like the cities should get more power, that doesn't make any sense. What's the point of having two branches? So Cenk basically wants to get rid of the Senate. I don't see what the point is of having the House represent by population and then also another layer of the legislative branch that's represented by population. Let's get back. Cenk Uygur, Tim Cast IRL, Tim Pool, Phil Labonte. This is great, man.
do you know about? So I covered the drought in California. It's 10 years ago. We had drought in California. I went to Tulare County. 300,000 poor people, a lot of migrant workers and farmers live there. I went to these farms and they were drilling tens of thousands of feet down into the earth for groundwater so they could water their crops because the drought had been very severe. I went to the home of a poor migrant family that they harvested crops. They had no water. They turned their water on, nothing came out. The reason was their wells at their houses only go down 30 feet, but the farmers were drilling down 5 to 10,000 or more feet. So the groundwater had been sucked all up for the farms. So the first thing we thought was, hey, they're stealing the water from the poor workers for their business and their crops. Well, the argument was, yeah, but we have to grow food, otherwise we don't eat. And I said, okay, well, we got to figure something out, right? So I go to the farms and I said, why are you doing this? And they said, we provide a third of the economy of the state. We're producing food. I mean, there's nothing here. There's no workers here unless we can grow the crops. I look over and there's a canal full of water. I said, why don't you just take the actual water that you have that comes from the mountains? And they said, we are a county. This is what I heard from like 7 different farmers. We're a county of 300,000 people. We voted to keep our water. And the cities like San Diego and Carlsbad with golf courses outvoted us. So we went to Carlsbad and we saw golf courses getting watered. They actually, the people who lived there came out and said, we refuse to have brown lawns. We should have the right to water our lawns. Across the street from a golf course with watered green grass was poor migrant workers with no water. And it all came down to, in a system of direct democracy within the state, it was put to a vote. And the cities with majorities said, we want the water for the cities, not for the people where the water came from. I said, that's really interesting. So if you try to figure out a way to balance this, looking at a national level, what happens if you go to a state like Montana that's about to be inducted in a given statehood, and we say, we're going to do everything popular vote? Montana goes, you're going to come in here and you're going to vote to take out all of our water from us. In fact, it happened. Arizona tried suing, file a lawsuit against, I think it was Illinois, to take Great Lakes water. And the only reason it got stopped is because Ontario is a foreign country and it's part of the Great Lakes Coalition. So that would interfere with Canada and international obligations. So Arizona was not able to start shipping water from the Great Lakes, which would have depleted it. So what I end up seeing is you tell the states, here's what we're going to do. There'll be two forms of representation. You're not guaranteed to win. The people may actually vote to take the water and the minerals from your state. But we'll create two systems. One, you're a small state, you'll get one at-large representative, but you'll have two senators. Every state gets two senators, and the Senate will be your competing voice, so there'll be some minority representation. Lest we see what happens inside of California, where 2 million people living in an urban center, put it up to a vote. We 2 million outweigh the 300,000. We take all their water, and they did. And those people didn't have any water. So I don't think there's a perfect solution for it, but I think something there works.
So Tim
is so good with the recall, reading all these articles. Great example of how a direct democracy, you would take that example and extrapolate it to every issue on the federal level. If you want to talk about fetuses, the reproductive rights, that would be now handled at the federal level the same way LA and New York wants to. How about crime? You want crime, you want taxes, you want public safety, you want reproductive rights, you want all of these major federal issues, artificial intelligence, censorship, everything, war, handled and dominated by LA and New York and these dense urban areas. You must be crazy.
I can show you thousands of examples where people get outvoted and it feels like an injustice, and it feels I get outvoted all the time, right? And so it is what it is, and that's not a reason to take down democracy. So what I'm worried about is this dangerous talk of, well, some people don't like what the government concluded, so maybe we shouldn't do majority rule. Maybe we should just let if I reverse it and I go, okay, maybe we shouldn't do majority rule. You know what? Maybe the Democrats just should rule forever because they're kinder, they're nicer, right?
Let me just ask.
I'm going to end with this here, though, looking it up. To be clear, when Tim was talking about the representation in Congress, the legislative branch before the 17th Amendment, he's talking about the state legislative body. That's the key there, not the House representatives. The state legislative bodies were the ones that chose the senators, the state senators. It gave state governments a direct voice in the federal government. Without that, now we have what we have now, where Donald Trump has got into power, and the Republican senators are saying, we're not going to approve Pete Hegseth. We're not going to approve Matt Gaetz or whoever else. I don't want to argue if they should or shouldn't be. The point is that the states that voted for Donald Trump would have, under that old way, would have more power. Their senators would be reporting to their state legislative bodies. And if those senators didn't do what they needed to do, the state legislators would pay the price and they would be gone. Now what we have are the senators. You would have to, Joni Ernst, you would have to run against her. You know how many millions? These people, they bank millions upon millions. Carrie Lake couldn't even break through against Ruben Gallo. So you would have to now get Joni Ernst out. If under the old way, all you would have to do is get your state legislative body out. Much easier to do. More money would be packed into those races. Those positions would be more powerful, but that is a better system. Let me know what you think. This is a great conversation. After show carnage. This is what we do. Click. There's another video. It doesn't stop. We keep going. We keep going. Let me know what you think.
The next clip is ready below. Welcome to After Show Carnage.